Good morning, everyone. I would like to call the meeting together this morning of the Amherst Exempted Village Board of Education. And we'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of
the United States of America
and
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please, Mrs. Giuffredo.
Mrs. Neidert.
Here.
Teresa Gillis.
Here.
Mr. Engel.
Here.
Mr. Iacobozzi.
Here.
Mr. Zappa.
Here.
Could I take a motion for the recommendation to accept the agenda as presented with any addendums?
So moved.
Rex moved. Who second?
Ron seconded.
Ron second.
Yep.
Any discussion? Roll call, please, Mrs. Giuffredo.
Mr. Engel.
Aye.
Mr. Iacobozzi.
Aye.
Mrs. Gillis.
Aye.
Mr. Zappa.
Aye.
Mrs. Neidert.
Aye. And then we'll move on with the treasurer's recommendations. Mrs. Giuffredo.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to share my screen here. And I'm going to start my PowerPoint presentation for the 5-year forecast. So you've all been through the 5-year forecast presentation before. So there are really a great deal of slides in this presentation that are somewhat repetitive in nature. There is a basis for the report. It's required by Ohio Revised Code, submitted to the Ohio Department of Education. There's a semi-annual requirement to it. November and May. This is the update. It's for the general fund only, which is for our operational revenues and expenditures. The prior 3 years, the current year, and 4 consecutive years. Same way with expenditures, 3 prior years, the current year, and 4 consecutive years. And then what are really important are the assumptions used in predicting the numbers, the mechanical part of the forecast. The purpose of the report, it's the roadmap for our district's financial future, planning for consistency, planning for change, shows the district's anticipated revenues and expenditures. And of course, there are always obstacles on our journey. The biggest obstacle is uncertainty, because we really truly cannot predict the future, although we try to assume great things about we still have changes in the income stream and revenue. We have changes in legislation that happen without our having any power over them. I have a couple of slides here on the state of Ohio revenue for this year, major sources of revenue, the state of Ohio appropriations, the major budget areas for the state, what the state reductions have been here recently. And then we come across here what our Amherst total revenue was for fiscal 19, which was last year, $38,055,091. And the majority of our revenue comes from general property tax here in the bright orange. And then over here in the brownish orange is 39.62, which is our unrestricted or our basic aid from the state. The next major component, as I said, that was in a kind of a brownish color was our real estate. And here are our last 3 items in red. Are our last 3 years, 2017, 18, 19 real estate revenue in the next 5 years. This year we came in above our October forecast. Next year, we've been told to predict a 5% reduction in local revenues. And then 22, we have assumed that they will come back up to current levels. And then in 23 and 24, these bars are considerably less because we're expecting a renewal levy. In 2024, that renewal levy is it's over $4 million. So we have potential issues with real estate tax revenue. Again, we've been told to expect delinquencies of 5 to 10%. You know, Mr. Sayers, the superintendent, and I have spoken about this. We don't really anticipate that high of delinquencies, but it was a suggestion, and I have no other information better than that with which to make a prediction. We'll likely see a lack of new construction stalled, a sluggish real estate market. We have the triennial update and then reappraisal again in 2024. We will eventually collect 100% of the collection. If we don't get it in 2021, we likely get those delinquencies paid to us. Again, the triennial update and the reappraisal. Now we'll talk about cuts in revenue from the state. A few weeks ago, we learned that Governor DeWine was cutting the current year's appropriations. And the way it shakes out for Amherst is that we are losing just over $730,000 in basic aid this year. Next year, that equates to 4.99% for the district. And it was suggested that we look at a 10% reduction in state aid for next year, fiscal 21, which works perfectly for us. It's double what the deduction was from basic aid this year. We've been told in fiscal 22 that we will return to fiscal 19 levels. Here is a graph then of our unrestricted grant and aid from the state. And you see, for the most part, other than a hiccup in 2021, where we are reduced by over 1.4 million, we're going back to current levels. And this graph is very telling because we are on the guarantee. Amherst is on the guarantee, and the major assumption for unrestricted or basic aid is that for the next biennial budget, which covers our fiscal year 22 and 23, we assume that we will still be on the guarantee. So we're still going to be expecting about $14.6 million in basic aid. Now, in line 1035, which is our unrestricted line, you'll remember that that also includes casino revenue. And in the document that you received for the forecast and assumptions, there is greater detail about casino revenue. It was suggested that we reduce casino revenue by 40% for next year, and then a slow return to current levels by the end of the forecast. So just phased it back in. And in fiscal 24, we will be receiving again just under $194,000. Amherst fiscal 19 total expenditures were greater than 37 million. Our major areas then of expenditure are salaries and wages and fringe benefits and purchase services. That's greater than 90% of the total expenditures for the district. Thought that this slide here, which you've seen in the past, is very telling about the consistency with which Amherst controls expenditures. This is a stacked bar chart for salaries and fringe benefits, and you'll see that by the end of the forecast, we are growing, of course, in salaries and benefits, but it's not as sharp of an increase as what most entities would see. So again, it speaks to the consistency here. The next 5 slides are just revenue, expenditures, and cash reserves at the end of the year. I don't want to belabor the point. This just shows the trend with total revenues, total expenditures, and cash balance of the year. But here's where I really want to spend a little bit of time. These are the things that we need to consider and the things that aren't necessarily worked into the forecast at this point. We have been told that we will be receiving about $270,000 in Federal CARES Act funding. We do not yet have strict guidance on how those funds are supposed to be spent. With federal funding, there is a supplement versus supplant issue, and we're typically not permitted to take expenditures out of the operational funds and move them into federal grants. But we understand that the Federal CARES Act funding might have less stringent rules, so to speak, guidelines. We don't know yet. So that $270,000 has not been carved out of the general fund expenditures in any way. State wellness funding, we are still going to be receiving state wellness funding. It's over $400,000 for fiscal year 2021. We're not yet sure. We had a plan on how we were going to spend the wellness monies. We are currently trying to decide whether the state wellness funding is going to be used to cover for salaries and benefits, or if it will be for purchase services and supplies. But the next forecast you see, we will have it reflected in the forecast. And just again, these amounts, considerable sums of money, have not been worked into the forecast. So we want to talk about consistency. A few charts ago, we talked about consistency with salaries and benefits, but it bears to be told that with sound and prudent financial practices, we have built a healthy financial position in Amherst. As we look to the future, again, consistency, it's a big theme here. We remain financially stable through at least fiscal year 2023. And our next ballot issue will be a renewal in 2022. We just want to make sure that our focus remains that we will closely monitor and control expenditures. And we always want to make sure that there's minimal impact to our high quality educational program. And just, it always bears to be said, Amherst is consistently performing in the top 20% of the state, while our expenditures per pupil are in the lowest 20%. And that is the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Giuffredo.
Nice. Thank you.
Very well done.
Very nice. There
Here
we
we
go.
are. We're back. Okay, can I take a motion then to approve our 5-year forecast?
So move.
Second.
Second.
Moved by Teresa, seconded by Mark. Any discussion about the forecast?
I'd like to make just one more comment, if I could, to kind of build on a couple of things that Amy shared. One of the things, as the board is aware, that makes sometimes situations like we're in the midst of now so frustrating, is that state funding in these potential state cuts are beyond our control. I mean, we as a district, obviously, we have very little control over how much money we receive from the from the state. So really what our focus needs to be is on those things that we do have control over, and namely our expenditures. And I just wanted to share a little bit. I was actually going through some historical documents the other day, and Amy and I were talking about this, and I actually discovered that our expenditures in terms of salaries and benefits will actually be less this current fiscal year than what they were in 2010-11. And I think you'd be hard pressed to find a district whose salaries and benefits are less now than what they were back in 2010-11. So I just wanted to reassure the board that just as we've done over the past number of years to position ourselves for financial stability, we're going to continue those practices as we kind of navigate through these uncertain times. And we're very fortunate because of the way we've managed our funds over the last number of years, that we're in a better position to kind of manage or weather the financial storm that we're in as far as state funding is concerned. So again, just a note that I wanted to share there with the board, that obviously these potential state funding cuts are very, very concerning to us and can have a huge impact on where we're at as a district, but we're going to focus on the things that we have most control over, and that is our expenditures, and making sure that we're providing good return on investment for our taxpayer dollars. So again, just wanted to share that, and thank you so much, Amy, for the presentation. Very well done.
Rex, you're muted.
Amy,
Yes.
this is Ron.
Yes.
Salaries and benefits as a percentage of total expenditures is about what, 76%?
Yes.
Okay, that's good.
Yes.
I remember years ago when it went to 90% one time, years ago.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, Rex.
And I
go
would
ahead.
just say that as we talked about this at the committee meeting, even though we have managed and controlled the expenses and the salaries very well, we have not cut any programming in doing that. We've actually added programming at every grade level, at every school level. I shouldn't say at every grade level, but at every school, we've added some type of programming to enhance the education that Amherst provides. So I think that's an important point to point out that has happened in the last 10 years.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Mr. Engel. And I should have mentioned that as well. Not only are our salaries and benefits less now than what they were in 2010-11, but to your point specifically, we've added programs like all day, everyday kindergarten, orchestra, Spanish throughout the district, additional electives at the junior high and high school. So that's a great point, and thank you for mentioning that.
Anyone have anything else? Mr. Sayers, anything else we need to cover?
No, that's all. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'll take a motion for adjournment then.
We didn't take roll call.
We need to call
Oh,
roll.
sorry. Yeah,
We
thank
didn't do
you.
roll call on that.
Roll
Yeah.
call. Yes, I'm sorry.
Mrs. Gillis. Aye. Mr. Zappa.
Aye.
Mr. Engel.
Aye.
Mr. Yacobozi.
Aye.
And Mrs. Snyder.
Aye.
All right.
Okay, now I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I make that
motion. I'll second.
Okay, Teresa moved, Ron second.
Mhm.
Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Gillis. Aye. Mr. Yacobozi.
Aye.
Mr. Engel.
Aye.
Mr. Zappa.
Aye.
Mrs. Snyder.
Aye. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.